When we trade belonging for fitting in, we don't just lose connection, we lose pieces of ourselves. True belonging starts with belonging to yourself. I wish I had learned this sooner. For the longest time, I thought belonging was something out there, something I had to find, a group I had to be part of, a place where people would just finally say, hey, we see you, you're in. Like there was this magical circle I just needed to break into and everything would be okay. But what I kept bumping into over and over in the research and in my own life was this hard truth. You can't belong anywhere until you belong to yourself first. I know, sounds a little self-helpy, but this isn't just a feel-good idea. This is what the data said. I asked hundreds of people across different backgrounds, tell me about a time you felt like you truly belonged. And the stories I expected to hear, things like, oh, my friend group in college or my team at work, those were there. But the ones that stood out, the ones that felt like they had a different kind of weight to them, went more like this. The first time I said no, and I didn't feel guilty. When I stopped pretending I liked things I hated, the day I walked away from a place that never made room for me. Over and over, belonging wasn't about finally getting a seat at the table. It was about having the courage to say, I'm going to show up as I am, whether there's a seat here for me or not. I remember sitting across from a woman, early 60s, retired teacher, who told me about the moment she felt like she finally belonged. I was expecting her to talk about a group of lifelong friends or her family, but she leaned in and said, it was the day I realized I liked being alone. I stopped trying to prove that I wasn't boring because I don't like parties. I just started being who I am. And it felt like home. That stuck with me because the reality is sometimes belonging to yourself means standing alone. And that's the part we don't like to talk about. Belonging sounds warm and fuzzy, right? But the truth is it can get pretty lonely. There are moments when choosing to be yourself means stepping away from the group. It means risking disconnection. That's the paradox. Belonging starts with being willing to stand apart. I've felt it myself. I can still remember sitting in a meeting where everyone was nodding along with a decision I knew wasn't right. Everything in me was screaming, just go along, don't be difficult, fit in. But there was another voice, the quieter one, the one I had spent years ignoring. It said, speak up. This isn't you. My hands were sweating, my heart was racing, but I spoke up. And let me be honest, it didn't feel good. I wasn't met with applause. There were eye rolls, there was tension. I walked out of that room and thought, why do I always have to make this so hard for myself? But later that night, as I replayed it in my mind, something shifted. For the first time in a long time, I felt proud. Not because I had convinced anyone or won, but because I stayed with myself. That's what belonging feels like. It's not perfect. It's not always easy. But it's solid. It's the feeling of being able to look in the mirror and say, I see you. I'm not leaving you. And let me tell you what I've learned. The more you practice that kind of belonging, the more the loneliness fades. Because when you belong to yourself, the people who see you really see you start finding their way into your life. You stop chasing circles that were never meant for you. You stop editing yourself to earn a place that was never yours. And you start building something different, something real. So if you're wondering where to begin, start here with you. Fitting in is a hustle for acceptance. I don't know about you, but I can hustle with the best of them. I'm not talking about the kind of hustle where you're working hard toward a goal you care about. I mean the other kind. The hustle for approval, for acceptance, the exhausting, shape-shifting, please like me hustle. I know it well because I've done it more times than I can count. And what I've learned, both through research and from my own very personal failures, is that fitting in is never about belonging. It's about performing. One of the most sobering moments in my work came when I started asking people the difference between belonging and fitting in. I thought those words were interchangeable. They're not. Fitting in is becoming what you think you need to be accepted. Belonging is being who you are and being accepted for that. And the hard truth, fitting in is a hustle. And it's a hustle that will break your heart. I sat across from a man in his 40s, successful, confident, the kind of guy you'd assume has it all figured out. But when I asked about belonging, his voice cracked. He told me he had spent his entire life fitting in. at school, at work, even in his family. He said, I'm 45 years old and I don't think a single person really knows me. That broke something open in me because I knew exactly what he meant. I've been there. That place where you realize you've built a life around being who you thought people wanted you to be. And now you don't even know if they like you or just the version you created for them. The research echoed what he said. People who talked about fitting in described it as exhausting, like being on a stage all the time. They talked about constantly scanning the room. What's everyone wearing? What's everyone talking about? How do I adjust so I'm not too much or too little? It's work, and not the kind of work that fulfills you. It's the kind that leaves you drained, anxious, and feeling more alone than ever. Here's what's even harder. Sometimes the hustle works. Sometimes you get the approval, you're invited to the thing, you get the laugh, you feel like you're in, but it's hollow because deep down you know they don't know me, they like the version of me I built for them. And that's the loneliest place to be. I remember talking to a college student who said, I was voted most popular in high school. Everyone liked me, but I was miserable. I felt like I had built this whole life on what everyone else wanted me to be, and now I don't know how to stop. That's the trap. When we start hustling for acceptance, it can feel like there's no off-ramp because the fear kicks in. What if I stop? What if I show them who I really am and they don't stay? But here's what I know. Every time we choose fitting in over belonging, we betray ourselves just a little. And those little betrayals, they add up. Over time, they chip away at our sense of self. We start losing touch with who we are, what we need, what we love. We get so good at reading the room that we forget how to read ourselves. That's why the hustle for acceptance is so dangerous. It doesn't just cost us connection, it costs us. I see it in the research, I see it in the people I talk to, and I see it in myself. But here's what gives me hope. Every time I choose to stop hustling, every time I choose to show up as I am, even if it's uncomfortable, something shifts. Because the truth is, the people who matter, the people who are meant to be in your life, they don't need the hustle. They need you and the freedom that comes with that. It's everything. Belonging is unconditional, but it's not always comfortable. I used to believe that once I found true belonging, it would feel like this warm, cozy place, like a constant hug from the universe, safe, easy, effortless. Turns out that's not how it works. Real belonging, the kind that changes you, holds you up when life gets hard, it's unconditional, yes. But comfortable, not always. Sometimes it's the opposite. Sometimes it's the hardest thing we'll ever stand in. I learned this the way I learned most things, the hard way. I remember sitting with a group of women during a study on connection. They were talking about their closest friendships, the ones they said felt like home. One woman said, I know I belong with them because I can fall apart and they don't run. Another woman nodded, then added quietly, I know I belong because they call me out when I'm not being myself, even when it's hard to hear. That's when it hit me. Belonging isn't about being surrounded by people who agree with everything I say. It's about being with people who see me, really see me, and love me enough to hold me accountable to being who I am. And let me tell you, that kind of love, it can feel like a gut punch sometimes. I've had moments in my own life where I thought I was being brave, thought I was showing up fully, only to have someone I trusted say, hey, that's not you, you're hiding. My first reaction, defensiveness, shame, the urge to pull away, because being seen, being known, especially when I'm not at my best, that's vulnerable. But the second reaction, the deeper one, is gratitude, because those are the moments I remember I belong here. I don't have to be perfect. I just have to be me. And here's what the research showed. People who experience true belonging talk about feeling safe, but not in the way we often think about it. It's not safety from discomfort. It's safety within discomfort. It's knowing I can be honest here. I can be messy. I can be wrong, and I won't be abandoned. That's the difference. Fitting in is smooth and polite on the surface, but underneath there's this quiet fear. If they really knew me, would they stay? Belonging can be messy, but it's solid. It's knowing, even when it's hard, we're not going anywhere. I sat across from a man who had been part of the same group of friends for 20 years. He told me about a night when he made a choice that went against his values. He said, I was ashamed. I thought they would judge me, but instead they said, we love you. We're not going anywhere, but this isn't you. Let's figure it out together. He said that was the night he knew I belong. But here's what's hard. Sometimes the people who truly love us the most are the ones who say the hardest things. I've felt it with my closest friends. I've felt it in my marriage. I've felt it with my team. The people who belong to me and the people I belong to, we don't avoid the hard conversations. We walk into them. Sometimes with tears, sometimes with shaking voices, but always with the same message. I'm not leaving. I see you, and I want you to see you too. That's belonging. Unconditional, but not always easy. And every time we choose that kind of belonging, every time we let ourselves be seen, every time we stay when it would be easier to go, we build something unbreakable. We build home. Fitting in costs us authenticity. I don't think I fully understood this until I started asking people, when do you feel like you're not enough? I expected the usual answers: work stress, parenting guilt, body image struggles, and those were there. But what caught me off guard were the stories about ordinary moments. Lunch with friends, small talk at a party, sitting in a meeting at work. People describe these subtle, everyday experiences where they felt this pressure to shift, dial themselves down, polish up the edges, say what they thought others wanted to hear. Moments when they felt like being themselves just wasn't quite right. And what I heard over and over was that every time they made those little adjustments, every time they hid their true thoughts, laughed when they didn't feel like it, pretended to care about something they didn't, they left feeling the same way: empty, disconnected, exhausted. I remember one woman, a teacher, telling me, I don't even know when it started, but somewhere along the way, I became the person everyone needed me to be. I'm really good at it, but now I don't know who I am when I'm alone. That hit me because I knew exactly what she meant. The research was clear. Every time we trade authenticity for acceptance, we pay for it with our sense of self. It's not one big event. It's a slow erosion, a little shift here, a quiet compromise there. And then one day we look around and realize we've built a life where we're liked, maybe even admired, but we feel unknown. I've been there. I remember walking into a room once, full of people I respected, people I wanted to impress, and I could feel it, the pull, that familiar voice whispering, okay, what's the vibe here? Be smart, but not too much. Be funny, but not weird. Fit in, and I did. I played the part perfectly. I left that night with smiles, handshakes, and maybe even a few compliments. But I got in my car and felt nothing because they hadn't actually seen me. They'd seen the version of me I thought they wanted. And it's hard to feel connected when you know the connection is built on something false. That's the price. The data showed this pattern. People who constantly prioritize fitting in reported higher rates of anxiety, stress, and loneliness because they weren't actually connecting. They were performing. And performance is exhausting. Here's the thing. Authenticity isn't just a nice idea. It's a core part of our well-being. When we deny who we are to be accepted, our body keeps score, stress hormones spike, our nervous system stays on high alert because we're constantly managing, constantly assessing, constantly asking, am I getting this right? And over time, that takes a toll. I spoke with a man in his 60s who said, I spent my whole life trying to be what other people wanted. I was a good son, a good husband, a good employee, but now I'm tired. And I keep thinking, what if I had just been me? Would the people who loved me have stayed? Would my life have looked different? That's the heartbreaking part. When we hustle for acceptance, we never really know if we're loved for who we are or for the mask we wear. And here's what I've learned. Authenticity is scary because it comes with risk. There's no guarantee. When we show up as we are, some people might not stay, but the ones who do, those are your people. Those are the connections that will fill you up not drain you. Because when we're truly seen and we're still accepted, that's where belonging lives. So every time I feel that familiar pull to shift, to smooth things over, to fit, I try to pause and ask myself, is this who I am? Or is this who I think they need me to be? Because the difference, it's everything. Belonging requires us to stand alone sometimes. I wish this weren't true. I wish I could tell you that belonging is always about being surrounded by your people, feeling held and seen, that it's all warmth and togetherness. But the reality is, belonging often starts with something much harder, standing alone. I remember the first time I really understood this, I was sitting across from a young woman, bright, articulate, the kind of person who lights up a room. She told me about growing up in a family where she never quite fit. She loved art, poetry, music, the things that made her feel most alive. But in her home, success was measured in practicality. Good grades, a sensible degree, a clear career path. She said, every time I talked about what I loved, I felt like I was letting them down. So I stopped. I became who they needed me to be, and it worked. But now, I don't know who I am anymore. Her voice cracked when she said it, and I could feel the weight of her words in my own chest, because I've been there. The day she finally chose to pick up a paintbrush again, after years of setting that part of herself aside, was the day she started reclaiming her belonging. But it came with a cost. She said, I felt so alone. They didn't understand. They thought I was throwing my future away. I kept thinking, maybe I should just go back to what they want. Maybe it's easier. That's the tension. Belonging doesn't always feel good in the beginning. Sometimes it feels like walking away from the crowd, turning towards something uncertain and hoping, praying that your people will still be there when you arrive. But the research showed me this over and over. True belonging starts with belonging to ourselves first. And belonging to ourselves, that means choosing authenticity over approval. It means showing up for our values even when it's uncomfortable. It means sometimes being the only one standing in the room who believes what we believe. That's lonely. I've had moments where I stood up for something I care about and immediately felt the cold draft of disapproval. I've left rooms knowing people were rolling their eyes, whispering behind me, and every time I had that gut check moment. Was it worth it? The answer is always yes. But it doesn't mean it didn't hurt. A man in his 50s told me, I grew up in a town where everyone thought the same way. When I started questioning things, when I started voicing different opinions, I lost friends, people I'd known my whole life. It felt like I'd been exiled, but I finally felt like I knew who I was. That's what belonging asks of us. It asks us to choose ourselves, our values, our voice, our truth, even when it costs us the approval of others. And I won't lie, that cost can be high. There might be moments when you stand in that gap between who you were and who you're becoming, and it feels like you're completely alone. But here's what I know. It's in those moments that we begin to build the life we actually want. Because the people who love you for you, they'll find you. And the people who only love the version of you that performed for their approval, they'll drift away. That's not rejection. That's clarity.